Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the Pilot Lawyer Podcast. Thank you for your attention while this important legal information is reviewed. What you hear should not replace consultation with an attorney and should not be considered advice for your situation. On behalf of the Pilot Lawyer and your entire crew, it's our pleasure to have you aboard.
Welcome, aviators, to the Pilot Lawyer Podcast with us, the Ison Brothers at the Ison Law Firm, where aviation law is all we do. You're here for what we do best, navigating the FAA Medical Certification process for pilots and those who want to become pilots. Around the office, we say if you don't laugh, you cry. And for the next 30 minutes, we hope to bring you the lighter side of what can otherwise be a frustrating process. So whether you're laughing at us or with us, join us, brothers, as we discuss the fascinating world of FAA medical certification.
I'd like to say something to the listeners. I took some heat for y'all last week.
Nobody cares what kind of heat you took.
Yeah, from your wife, I took heat because of my little snippet
Let's not bring this.
at the end, because that's what I was told to say.
Nobody told you to say that.
He said not to say it, so I didn't say it. But in essence, I was told to say it.
I think that was a week before last because there's another one coming out in between this one.
Oh, well, whatever.
Did it give you a headache?
I'm getting one right now.
Well, just looking at you.
Giving
gives
me a
headache.
migraine.
Yeah, speaking of migraines, so you're going to be able to get your medical with all these angry wife-induced migraines?
Yes, the end.
Perfect.
How many times do we make that joke before people's...
Well, we've lost subscribers on YouTube.
Shocking.
I noticed today that we had 11. Previously had 11. Now we're down to 10. So we scurred somebody away.
Well,
That hurts.
maybe YouTube just banned them.
Yeah.
Tree Hugger Joe.
Yeah. So
Well, who's gonna
allow
talk?
me. We're here to talk about migraines today and the FAA medical certification process. A lot of people have migraines. A lot of people have headaches. A lot of people have tension headaches. And there's varying degrees of headaches, migraines, tension headaches, and so on. But to start with, how are we going to expose our migraines to the FAA?
Well, we're going to put it on the FAA Form 8500-8 application for Airman Medical Certification, where it asks, have you ever in your life been diagnosed with, previously had, or presently have, and you get that question 18A, headaches, frequent or severe headaches. It doesn't say anything about migraines. It just says frequent or severe headaches.
The expectation, though, is that migraines will go in 18A because migraines are considered to be a severe headache. So you could maybe have had 1 or 2 migraines over the course of your life. Even though it wasn't frequent, it was severe because it's frequent or severe.
This is one of those questions where I frequently will tell people while we're talking on the phone, and I talk to people on the phone, Anthony.
You talk to people on the phone?
Yeah, there it is.
Infrequently.
But it's one of those questions where you don't necessarily, I think, have to have a diagnosis to know whether you've had or presently have frequent and severe headaches. Whereas maybe something like, I don't know, PTSD or a traumatic brain injury or something along those lines may really kind of require a medical diagnosis to know if you've had it. Having a frequent and severe headache, you're going to know if you're having that. So this is one of those ones that, well, I don't have a diagnosis of it. It's not in my medical records. Well, fine, but that's not what the question asks. The question asks a history, a lifetime look back in your whole life. Have you ever had frequent or severe headaches, or do you presently have frequent or severe headaches, or have you ever been diagnosed with it? So,
Well, that's the thing. I've seen cases. I'm not sure if you have, but I've seen cases.
Oh, I'm blind. That's a whole other issue.
Well,
We'll get to the vision
that's why you're
standards
such a good pilot. With the, you're going to get a hotline complaint. People think you're blind now. So, nevertheless, there have been situations where people have gone to their AME and they've never been to a doctor relative to the condition. So, for example, hypertension or whatever. And the AME says, hey, you need to figure out what this is. I don't like that you're having headaches. And you've maybe never been to the doctor for headaches. And then you go to the doctor because your AME and ipso facto, the FAA sort of forces you to go get these headaches evaluated and come to find out you've got some other issue, some impetus for the migraines, such as some sort of hypertension or some sort of, God forbid, a brain tumor or something along those lines. So perhaps putting it down on your MedExpress might just
Save your life.
might just save your life. I've seen it before.
God forbid the government actually do something to help you.
So let's say you do go in there, report it, whether you've never been diagnosed with it before or if you've been a regular diagnosed person of migraines. What's going to happen?
Well, I think we need to discuss what the types of headaches are we're looking at first, right? So how the FAA categorizes them for the regulatory purpose of medical certification.
Yeah, that'd be beautiful. Do you
So-
think you can do that?
We'll try. I have this nifty little script here in front of me. And
He's a far cry from Rush Limbaugh.
in my never nicotine stained fingers, I have this little scrap of paper. And so essentially the FAA breaks migraines and headaches. I'm having one now. Migraines and headaches into the following categories. You have stress headaches, tension headaches, and headaches controlled with over-the-counter medications. That's one category. Another category is the classic migraines, chronic tension headaches, chronic daily headaches, cluster headaches, or any history of a migraine which results in changes to vision. And then another category they have here is complicated migraines, post-traumatic migraines, and retinal migraines.
Well, that's just fascinating. So, what's going to get me? What's going to get my ticket faster and get me flying?
Well, the stress headaches, the tension headaches, and headaches controlled with over-the-counter medications will probably get you maybe a little bit quicker there than if you had complicated migraines with post-traumatic migraines or retinal migraines.
And why is that? Let's talk about it.
What are these layup questions?
Yeah.
What is this? Can't we just have a dialogue?
No.
It's not how the content's created.
Fine,
you know
whatever. So with a history of stress headaches, tension headaches, or headaches controlled with over-the-counter medications, the FAA will allow the AME, the Aviation Medical Examiner, to issue the applicant a medical certificate so long as the applicant presents with, one, an average of less than 2 headaches per day. Or I'm sorry.
You can't even read it. You can't even read the script.
They're very
I'm
lenient.
falling into the second category with the changes to vision.
They're very lenient. You can have 2 a day. That's fine.
Yeah.
2 a day. An average of less than 2 headaches.
Headache days. An
Headache
average
days
of less than an average of less than 2 headache days per month.
Whoever wrote this wrote it
I didn't
like an
I mean,
imbecile.
I wrote it, but I was essentially copying and pasting the policy.
Well,
so
whoever wrote the policy, give us a call. We're going to talk.
Mr. Eisen
How do
goes to
you-
Washington and takes care of
I
it.
mean, it doesn't make any sense. Less than 2 headache days per month.
They're calculating if you wake up
day
in the
of
morning.
headache?
If you wake up in the morning, you have a headache, and it goes away. I
That's a
have
day of-
another headache. So I've just had a
Same
I've had
day?
a day of
Yeah.
headaches. Yeah. And so, like, I wake up in the
We
morning.
just had a day
This is
of
a
headaches.
half hour of headaches right here. Jeez.
I had a day. Woke up, had a headache, smoked a cigarette, felt better. Then my headache came back.
Okay, all right.
That's a day of headaches.
So I think we figured it out over the course of the month. Whether it's a 30-day month, 31-day month, or some of those 28 or 29-day months, that month you only had 2 days where you had a headache.
yeah.
The other days you don't have a headache.
Now, don't you think,
think we
headache
get it.
is a bit subjective?
Yeah.
Like a headache.
What
day?
is a headache? I mean,
Yeah. I mean,
yeah. I mean, what's a stress headache?
Yeah,
I mean,
and how that it might get. I'm not.
now we're getting
I'm not
into the
logging
weeds.
every headache I've ever had.
Okay, so so then we have that's you have to have less than 2 headache days per month.
Just have 2 headaches less. Only 2 headaches a month.
It's a hard-
Just say it that way.
Yeah.
2 headaches a month.
2 headaches a month. That's what I'm getting at. Whoever wrote this
Again, not me.
is okay. Anyhow, so that's
I mean, I wrote the
that's,
blog.
Yeah, right. That's one criteria. Okay, I think we figured that out. Maybe. Then the applicant is using medications which are acceptable, and that's a whole issue, right?
Well,
What is
per
acceptable
this
medication?
category, the idea is it has to be an over-the-counter medication.
Okay.
So Tylenol, ibuprofen,
Aleve,
Excedrin.
we're going to relieve you of your position.
et cetera, et cetera.
And then the third criteria is that the applicant's headaches are not incapacitating.
Jeez,
Yeah,
incapacitating.
chicken parmesan for lunch. There's also a fourth criteria.
That's an easy excuse for you to blame it on lunch.
The fourth criteria, that'll segue into our hypertension episode later on. The fourth criteria, the headaches are not associated with any neurological findings.
How does neurological finding segue into hypertension?
I'm just saying,
He
he was talking about lunch, and then I'm talking about
blaming it
on lunch.
he teed it up as if number 4,
He's such a
the
big-
neurological finding was leading into the
listen, this
hypertension.
is
It's two different
showmanship.
systems.
I'm trying to keep the. Hey, I started off listening about migraines. These guys gave me one, but now I need to.
I am in agreement with that podcast commenter that this is painful to listen to. It's giving me a headache. How many times can we say this whole thing's giving us a headache before? Okay. So what would a neurological finding be, Dr. Alex?
I would imagine if you had like nystagmus or some kind of pupillary issue
not a
going
word.
on. Yeah, it is. Any pupils, one that's
Pupillary,
bigger than the other, not reacting appropriately to light, or if you had some kind of aura that is preceding the onset of the headache. So, some people can tell that they have a headache coming on, like becoming more sensitive to light or sound or something like
What is
that.
an aura? I've always thought
Aura.
it has some kind of glow about you.
You're thinking, you mean aria, right?
No.
A fat lady singing. All right. So an aura.
All right. So we have. That's pretty much.
That's pretty much. So
that-
what will
that
happen
one
in that
category?
category?
So,
What happens in that
if you go in, you put down on 18A, I have a history of frequent or severe headaches. Your AME is going to inquire regarding, well, what are these headaches like? How do they operate? Blah, 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 right? And you're going to tell them, well, they only happen like maybe once or twice a
I only
month.
have 2 headache days.
I only
a
have
month.
2 headaches days a month. Maybe I'll pop some Tylenol or some Advil if I have them. Maybe I won't because
Maybe
I
I'll
don't really
find
need
some
it.
on the street.
Right?
Pop them.
They don't really bother me. I can still drive. I can still do my work. I can still listen to these yahoos on the podcast.
Still pump iron if you're me.
Yeah. And then, I
Iron
don't
from
really
your
have any.
fork.
So anyhow, you tell your AME all those things, right? You go through those 4 criteria. And your AME should say, well, okay, these don't seem like the type of headaches that are going to be disqualifying in nature, and I'm going to go ahead and issue you a medical certificate. So you could, in theory, walk out of that
You're going to walk out
exam
of that exam.
with a certificate.
And then you could go on and have a headache day.
Yeah. However, it is always possible, though, that the FAA could follow up with an information request.
Wow, you've been paying attention.
Ooh.
Wow. So what will happen is if your AME issues the medical certificate, the FAA still has a discretion to follow up and say, oh, hold on, sir, Sonny. We need to know more about this. And they could require that there be more information given regarding your history of headaches and so on. It's probably not so likely, though, if you have a detailed clinical progress note from your treating physician or from a doctor that you provide to your AME. So if you just rely on your AME, you go in there and say, yeah, I have these headaches. And the AME sort of,
Maybe if he doesn't document it very well in Block 60.
Yeah, the FAA could very easily say, well, give us a letter from your treating physician about your headaches.
Yeah, so it could just kind of invite some additional scrutiny and obligations that you'll have to incur.
So if you go in there with the letter, armed with the letter, then you're in a spot where hey, listen, I meet this criteria.
I'd hope you'd be armed going into your examination. Otherwise, how are you going to fly the airplane?
Well, there was that girl.
That's true.
So
Okay,
she can do it.
She can do it. I can do it.
Has your FAA medical certificate been denied? Are you concerned you may not be able to get a medical certificate from the FAA? Are you at risk for FAA action for failing to report your medical history appropriately? Call the pilot lawyer at 1-855-FAA-1215 to discuss your options for getting the FAA to issue your medical certificate and get you flying. We are happy to evaluate your case and discuss with you a plan for presenting your case to the AME or the FAA. Aviation law is all we do, nothing else.
So let's move on to the next section.
The next section deals with classic migraines, chronic tension headaches, chronic daily headaches, cluster headaches, or any history of a migraine which results in changes to vision. These types of headaches are within the CACI program, which, Alex?
Conditions AMEs can issue.
Is a classic migraine the type where it's like the migraine says something snarky, and everyone says classic migraine.
No.
No.
These are actual headaches, okay?
Go ahead.
With these types of headaches that are CACI qualified, if you will, that basically means if you come into your AME and you put on your 8500, yes, I have a history of frequent or severe headaches, and he asks you, well, what are they like? What kind are they? You say, oh, it's one of these here in these categories. You're going to have additional documentation with you at the time of the examination so that the AME can then look at it and make a determination as to whether or not you've dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's for the CACI program, such that he can then go ahead and, in his discretion, issue you a medical certificate. He could also defer to the FAA for their further examination and review. But generally, the thought process is, if you come into the examination to see your AME and you have all the documents in place that are required under the CACI program because you have a history of classic migraines, chronic tension headaches, chronic daily headaches, cluster headaches, or any history of a migraine which results in changes to vision, then the AME can go ahead and give you a medical, assuming you otherwise meet the standards for medical certification.
Now, as to the process for the CACI program, as we've always said before, when you provide a letter from your treating physician, does it have to be a neurologist or can it just be any doctor?
Well, treating physician could
What
be,
if you don't have a doctor?
well, you better go get one, boy.
Get you one.
Yeah, I'm going to need one.
So you should probably go see a neurologist at that point if you don't have one.
In theory, yeah. Especially if you have kind of a more severe type of headache rather than just the stress headaches and so on. So to that end, if you have a doctor generate this document, a detailed clinical progress note, you want to be careful, though, because those notes can very well be scrutinized by the AME or by the FAA, which could identify ancillary concerns if those records reveal additional conditions or other issues that should be reported on your medical application.
We've come to that part of the podcast where you're now trying to plug amendments.
So if, for example, your detailed clinical progress note says, oh, yeah, his migraines are doing just fine.
But he's got a raging case of depression.
Or he has, he's missing an eye.
Raging case of hypertension.
Yeah. Or he's got, missing an arm.
What has he got to be missing body parts?
Yeah,
That's all that can come to mind right now.
Anyhow, he's got some other medical condition that has not been disclosed on prior applications.
That's right.
So now the FAA is looking at this document with respect to your history of migraines, but they're also seeing for the first time, oh, he's got these other conditions. They go back, they look at the past applications, and lo and behold, the person hasn't ever disclosed these conditions, despite the fact that this medical record that they're now holding in their probably nicotine-stained hands shows this individual has this medical history.
Well, what if maybe they have reported it, but it suggests that the condition has been previously reported has deteriorated.
Has worsened?
It's worsened.
There's been a change in circumstance.
So, for example, I got a letter of eligibility for my obesity, but my body mass index has gone up 20 points.
Well,
sounds familiar.
Looks about right.
Good one.
Okay. So essentially what Anthony's getting at here is that you need to be mindful of what's in your medical records and what's provided to the FAA in relation to what you have previously disclosed on your applications. And if there's something that is being disclosed to the FAA vis-a-vis a requested medical record, and it has other information in there that needs to be brought to the FAA's attention, you should probably do an amendment before that's sent out. So that way, all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed and everything's lined up chronologically from a legal perspective. And we're not going to get into all that right this second, but
now, should you just show up at your AME's office and have your AME tell you you need to go get a letter from your doctor?
No, it's too late at that point.
Come prepared.
You need to, have all your ducks in a row before you go in to see your AME. Otherwise, if you go in to see your AME and you have one of these types of headaches that are CACI, what was it, CACI qualified?
CACI qualified?
CACI qualified. But you don't have all the paperwork. You're just going to say, well, I'm going to defer you.
Hey, you want it to be CACI correct.
Yeah, I want to be CACI done with it. So what is, as far as these conditions are concerned, what do you got to do? How do you get CACI qualified?
Well, if you want to be CACI qualified, that's a good question. Well, one, you're going to have to produce a letter from a treating physician, which indicates that you're stable on your current regimen and that there are no changes recommended. So essentially, the FAA wants to know if we just let this old boy go out and fly, he's stable. It's not something he's yo-yoing up and down and you're just having a headache every 2 seconds. So in order to establish that the doctor's going to have to identify that these are the classic common migraines, chronic tension headaches, or cluster headaches, but they're not ocular or complicated migraines. The frequency can be no more than 1 episode per month. So even though with the other headaches, you're allowed to have 2 headache days a month, now you're allowed to only have 1 episode per month. So how long does an episode go on for? That's an interesting philosophical question.
Well, I suppose if it starts and there's no stopping it,
I know
it goes on for a day, there's 1 episode. But if you have it in the morning and it stops, you have lunch and it comes back.
What if it
That
crosses
seems like
over the
2
midnight
episodes.
line?
I think it depends because, like in practice, see people come in. Oh, I've had a headache for a week now.
That's an episode.
And then, I would count that as an episode, especially if it,
I don't believe the
subsequently-
lawyers would. I bet this from a regulatory standpoint, it's probably interpreted differently.
This is a crazy regulatory interpretation. This is a bar exam question.
You have an interpretation?
I'm making my own,
I think wouldn't it have to come from the record though? I mean,
and seemingly so.
and wouldn't have how the doctor wrote it up as an episode, quote
I
unquote.
think the idea is that you don't want it coming back and going away, coming back, going away. So anyhow, 1 episode. Symptoms. This might answer some of the question. You only have mild symptoms controlled with medication. They have to be approved preventative or abortive medications. And in the last year, there have been no inpatient hospitalizations, no more than 2 outpatient clinic or urgent care visits for exacerbations with symptoms fully resolved. And again, you're not allowed, as you were with the previous headache category, not allowed to have neurological or transient ischemic attack type symptoms, vertigo, syncope, or mental status change. So in that regard, that's what your episodes can't be so severe that, again, that it appears as though you're yo-yoing. You have to still be stable.
Should your detailed clinical progress note reference the
It should
fact that you haven't had
identify-
any of those issues?
It should identify all of that.
If it doesn't, are you up a creek or where are you at?
If it doesn't, it leaves room for the AME to have to interpret that it may put you in a spot where
He has to defer?
it has to defer.
You're
or,
up a creek with
or-
half a paddle.
Or they say, hey, we go back and get another note. Then you're scrambling to get your doctor to write a note so your AME can issue your new medical.
Good luck with that.
So as far as medications are concerned, though, there are preventative medications and abortive medications. So preventative medications for CACI qualification, there has to have been there should be no preventative medications with the exceptions of daily calcium channel blockers or beta blockers for prophylaxis without side effects. Prophylaxis.
Yeah.
Prophylaxis.
So they were probably talking more about
Yeah.
like
staving it off.
right, and probably more hypertensive type headaches and whatnot.
Are there any
Alex
other?
is crossing his legs as though he feels as though he's reached some level of authority on the podcast.
finally something I know something
finally
about.
something he knows a little bit about.
Probably.
Tenuous grasp on it.
Well, abortive medications, over-the-counter headache medications are fine. You have to have a no-fly period after certain medications, 24 hours after triptans, 36 hours after medications like Reglan, 96 hours after medications like Finnergan. And
Is
you're
that
not
it
al-
for the CACI conditions?
one more
requirements, I
One
should say?
more thing.
Not
This is
conditions.
important. No injectable medications and narcotics are applicable to the CACI program. So seemingly that would be like Botox.
Seemingly.
There's another category
Of headaches,
of headaches. Tell me
which
about
is
it.
where we're currently at.
Yep.
Complicated migraines, post-traumatic migraines, or retinal migraines.
Let's try to proceed through this pretty quickly because I can't afford another headache day this month or episode.
I suppose this would be a headache episode.
Oh,
Okay. So
It's painful to listen to.
with these types of conditions, unfortunately, this is going to require evaluation by Oklahoma City, the FAA, which is where the Aerospace Medicine Certification Division, the AMCD, is housed in Oklahoma City. So your AME, you're going to go in, you're going to see your AME, you're going to put down that you have a history of frequent severe headaches in response to question 18A on your application. Your AME is going to look at the application. He's going to say, well, okay, you marked yes for this. Tell me about your headaches. Well, they're quite complicated. Or they're in response to post-traumatic injuries I had due to a very severe car accident or head injury or something, where you had some type of, again, traumatic incident that has now given rise to these types of migraines, or you're having retinal migraines. So essentially, when you tell him that, that's going to kind of be a trigger for him, and he's going to say, well, or her, and he's going to say, well, I can't issue you the medical certificate here on the spot because the FAA won't allow me to do that. I'm going to have to defer it to Oklahoma City for them to take a look at. And at that point, you're going to walk out of the office without the medical certificate, and you're going to have to wait for the FAA to send you a letter asking for additional information.
What type of things are they going to ask for?
Or you could
proactively. Is there anything I can do proactively?
Give us a call, and we can help you get through it so that maybe you have all the documentation in order when you go in to see your AME so that he can submit it, or we could also contemporaneously submit it to the FAA. So that way you don't have to wait for them to send you a letter.
Yeah, you can be ahead.
You can kind of streamline the process and start maybe getting things.
It's not a secret what they're going to ask for.
Yeah.
So you can go ahead and get it in front of them and stave off a lengthy period of time. So, for example, if you just walk into your AME's office, get deferred, you're looking at maybe a month or 2 months before the FAA sends you back a letter and says, send us X, Y, and Z. Then you send in X, Y, and Z. You wait for it to rematriculate through the review process. Now you've wasted 3 or 4 months on something that could have been sitting there for them to review when they picked it up the first time. So what would that be in a situation like this?
In a situation like this, the FAA is typically going to want to know why you are having more severe headaches, and they're going to want to try to understand your level of risk for future incapacitation due to the headaches. So, how do you go about explaining to the FAA that there's not going to be a risk for future incapacitation due to these types of headaches?
Well, to assess that appropriately, the FAA will typically want a detailed clinical progress note from a board-certified neurologist.
A DCP?
A DCP. A DCPN on a DCP.
Uh-huh.
And essentially, what it is that the
wait, hang on a second, though. I think I got a little flippant. Mm-hmm. This was kind of an important thing.
Natural
it's not a treating physician, though, this time.
No, it's different than a treating physician.
You need a detailed clinical progress note from a
neurologist.
Not just
board-certified neurologist. So in our excellent wisdom, our perception is that it makes sense to not only have a board-certified neurologist, but someone who's also familiar with aviation standards. There are several aviation know-how neurologists in the country that we like to work with, that we believe can provide an extra layer of credibility to the opinion that you're not at risk for an incapacitating event, if that were to be the case.
What else do you need?
So in addition to that, the FAA will want an MRI of the brain performed no more than 1 year before your examination with the AME. So they'll want an MRI that's sort of, what it's doing is assessing what is the etiology of these headaches. Is there something that's more significant that's at play? And that's also something that you will discuss with that board-certified neurologist.
I think it's important to note, though, that if you got the MRI before you ever submitted your application, as opposed to submitting your application, having your AME deferred to the FAA, and then waiting for the letter to come, then going and getting the MRI. If you get the MRI first before you even, you can kind of maybe catch other issues that might also be aeromedically significant that the FAA is going to pick up on. And you can also start working towards gathering the necessary documentation to kind of help, again, streamline the process. So it might not be a bad idea to kind of have a little bit more situational awareness as to what's going on from the MRI perspective before you see your AME if you fall into one of these categories with a complicated migraines, post-traumatic migraines, or retinal migraines.
Right.
Is that a dumb thought?
I think it's largely dumb, but that's what we've come to expect from you. But I'll take dumb advice.
I was looking for
good advice.
Counselor. That was
Oh yeah, Counselor, that was well thought out.
coherent. I forget.
Whatever the line is from my cousin Vinny, just apply that there. Anyhow, they also want a statement identifying the number of headache days you experience throughout a month. Again, headache days, come back to that old bugaboo. What is that? But nevertheless, you also want to be careful in your statement not to be saying things that are potentially otherwise problematic. Of course, we always live by the motto of be truthful in your statements. Don't throttle anything. Give the FAA the actual facts. But just be aware of the fact that what you say in your statement could result in collateral damage that you may have to address with the FAA, which you may have to address no matter what. For example, if you say, hey, yeah, I have headache days. I have 5 headache days a month, and those are the days that I binge drink to blackout, and I wake up with a headache. That's a different story, and that's going to cause another inquiry. So just be cognizant of what you say in your statement. But again, be truthful. Number 4, they want anything else determined to be necessary by your treating physician, or essentially that board-certified neurologist. So if that neurologist also
He's not my treating physician. He's just some Joe Schmo you sent me to, sir.
Yeah, but if that Schmo wants something additional, they want it, by God. So I think, as everybody reaches for the Tylenol bottle and begs for mercy, that this podcast episode will be completed.
Well, wait 1 second. Let's say, though, that you get all that information to the FAA, and they determine that, I guess, what are their options? They have 3 options at that point. They can say, okay, this is not aeromedically significant. We're going to give you a letter of eligibility.
Right. Or they could put you on a CACI.
Or they could put you on a CACI, or I guess they got 4 options. Or they give you a special issuance.
Right.
Where they follow you more frequently as long as you provide updated, periodic, probably, detailed progress notes.
Right.
Or they could just outright deny you, right?
That's right.
All right. So that's kind of what happens there in that category. Just FYI.
That's right.
Anything else you want to add?
I don't know. I think that's it. So I'm turning base to final here. Are there any final parting shots on the migraine question?
I believe the takeaway is you can still get a medical even if you answer yes to 18A. So don't be afraid to answer honestly.
Or if you're receiving VA disability benefits for migraines and you report that at question 18Y and question 18A.
Yeah, there's always kind of more than one way that they try to figure out what's going on in a person's history. So that if they don't get you an 18A, they might get you at 18Y if it's VA benefits or even Social Security disability benefits or maybe somewhere in between. You give them some other record and it shows that, hey, I have a history of headaches.
Sure.
Because, they wanted to see my stuff about asthma or my stuff about hypertension or sleep apnea. Oh, he's got headaches.
Well, I think probably the most important takeaways, though, are that with headaches more generally, the FAA is concerned with, 1, what's the etiology, like you said? Is there something else that's causing this that we need to be aware of? And 2, is it something that's stable? Is it something that's yo-yoing? Are we going, if we give this person a medical, are they going to be all over the place? Or can we trust that it's that issue? And let me throw another one. A third thought process is also medication. With headaches, you get into a world where there's some nuanced criteria relative to what medications are acceptable, what combination of medications are acceptable. And that's something you always need to be very careful with. I will close this episode with a real world story. In 2012, the year of our Lord, there was an incident where a Lufthansa Boeing 747, the co-pilot, was struck down with a severe migraine midair, and the pilot became incapacitated. And fortunately, there was a what they identified in this article from the Daily Mail, a
co-pilot?
Quote, heroic stranger that was able to step in and help the captain land the plane, because he was also, this individual was a 767 captain.
Co-pilot.
Yeah.
There was a co-pilot.
Yeah, right. So all that being said, it is something that can be newsworthy. If a migraine is not effectively treated and appropriately followed, you might end up in a spot where you could be on the news. So, how would you like that?
Well, you've logged another uneventful half hour listening to the Pilot Lord podcast. And even though you're not going to have to answer yes to 18A, having a history of frequent and severe headaches listening to this podcast.
How long were you waiting to roll that one out?
About 38 minutes. We are the Ison Brothers of the Ison Law Firm.
Have a good day.
Bye.
See ya.
Merry Christmas.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.